Personalizing student engagement is only possible when enrollment management and Marcom are aligned. At Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, Ryan Hogan's team uses Element 451 to improve student outcomes.
They love the AI functions where if they're coming up with an email campaign, they can ask it to help develop something and then they go in and edit that. They also really enjoy the use of the landing pages for the campaigns that we build. So not only do we design emails and things, but we can also have landing pages that can give information to our students. And so they really brings the team together. So our enrollment staff is helping identify what the issue is, and then the marketing and communication staff can collaborate with them in Element to provide the solution for the problem we're trying to solve.
Aligned teams create better experiences for students. Visit element451.com to learn how an AI-first student engagement platform fuels a smarter, more connected campus experience. Welcome to Talking Tactics, a podcast that gets you results. Each episode features a single tactic, implemented with limited resources, that move the needle in some way. I'm your host, Day Kibbles, Vice President of Strategy at Ology, a marketing and branding agency for education. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the most clever folks in higher ed worldwide, doing the work day to day, just like you. Talking Tactics is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Check them out at element451.com. Hello, one and all. Welcome back to Talking Tactics. My name is Diana Kibbles, and I am your host, with the reminder to please follow, rate, subscribe, share, tell everyone you know about Talking Tactics, because it really helps the tactics go farther and help more people. On today's episode, Toni-Marie Critelli from St. John's University is here to tell us how her keyword choices have resulted in over 75 of the university's blog posts ranking in the top 10 results of Google, along with some pretty amazing visibility results. Toni, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to dive into this super important topic.
I feel like blogging is having its comeback moment, don't you think?
Yeah, I think especially with when you think about TikTok and Discord and all these platforms that Gen Z and really, you even see the older generations also on there. I think that they're really bringing back blogging as well, because I think that sharing insights matter today.
Yeah, I agree with you. And also when I think about AI being used to search for stuff online, where is that content going to come from? I think blogs are a really good source. So take us to what inspired you to even start a blog, or why a blog was even a priority or part of the mix at St. John's.
Yeah, of course. So just to give you some background, I was hired as a content creator, really, in the university, which of course, is very broad. There's so many different versions of what a content creator is. So I kind of just took a second to step back and be like, okay, what is something we're missing in our strategy right now? And just looking at other schools, kind of dissecting homepages and all these internal pages that you see on the school sites. You have to kind of do some digging. I noticed one thing that we didn't have was a blog. And I did see, just like reading a lot of articles on like Moz and just noticing that blogs were becoming popular again. And I just kind of saw that gap would be something that'd be really useful for the school, and getting those insights from faculty and students could be valuable. So yeah, that's kind of where I first started out.
I love it. A little bit of market intel, just sleuthing around. I love that. Okay. And so with the blog, like how did you set it up? What was your kind of initial goal with this? And how did you want to make sure that those insights actually made it to your audiences?
If I'm going to be honest with you, I don't even know if I had a goal at first. I think the biggest thing for me was really just to get this platform and just the idea of it around the school. I mean, I think that blogging is the way that blogging is set up today is so different than maybe it was 10, 20 years ago. It's a little bit more informal. It's just like the insights are structured differently. So believe it or not, at first, I would say that SEO wasn't actually kind of the strategy at hand. So when I got hired, we didn't have an SEO specialist. I personally was very new to SEO. I come from social media strategy, so it's a little bit different than writing blogs, but they are interchangeably similar in the structure, in the sense of strategy when you really dissect, the briefs and all of that. So it wasn't my initial idea. For me, it was really just to figure out what are our values of the school and how can I translate that into written content. But when we hired our staff member, Ash, she is our SEO content specialist. And she kind of brought to light the importance of SEO for me. And it kind of went from there. I would say when I first started, I was a couple months in, just kind of connecting with different stakeholders, seeing what was important to them and writing content based off of that. It's not the greatest strategy because we know that not everything you write about that the school looks for is going to rank. I mean, it's not what all the things that they want. Students aren't always searching. So I started to realize when we were talking back and forth about the importance of, keyword research and having that SEO strategy in place, even a very general one is super important. And yeah, we kind of just look back at our values at first, looking back and seeing what our strategic priorities are and how we can align that with the keywords.
I think what I really love about this is earlier you said, I don't know that I had a goal, but you kind of had a goal. Like your goal was innate to you, which is one, you want your university to be found. Mm-hmm. But what I love is that you want it to be found for what you stand for, right? So you're thinking about how do we rank on our values? And I just love that idea, right? When students are searching for universities, that value alignment is super important. And using a blog for that connection, I think is super clever.
Yeah, definitely.
So before we get into how you actually implemented it, you talking about maybe not quite understanding how SEO worked, what challenges did you know you would have to clear? What learning did you have to do before you stood up a successful blog?
I mean, besides SEO, just at the top of my major challenge is the fact that I'm the only writer primarily doing it full time. I think that is a challenge within itself. Obviously, getting guest writers and students to write, student workers, is great. But, in the beginning, I had to really figure out how I can make that work. That was my biggest challenge to start. I think in terms of SEO, the biggest challenge is the learning curve. So SEO, I'm sure you've heard this from several schools, is still pretty new to the university world. We're all kind of trying to catch up, and it moves so fast. I mean, one week we'll have all these different changes on Google, and the next week there's all these new changes for how to show up on Google. So I think it was really just getting a lot of the stakeholders and just keep people on board and sharing what SEO even means and to the very, very general terms of what SEO means, because obviously everyone has their own job at the school. So it's trying to introduce them in the most general sense. And you'll probably talk about it a little bit more too, but AI is very helpful, and we can jump into that later. But
I love that you entered this endeavor kind of knowing that there would be a learning curve for you and for your guest writers or the people that you're getting content from. So walk us through all that. Walk us through the implementation of how you made this blog happen and how you made it optimized for search engines.
Yeah. So in terms of kind of structuring the content calendar, I'm always trying to make it a mix of evergreen and, things trending. I think every school, university has an admission cycle. So there's certain things they would love to have at certain times of the year, whether that's, early enrollment or even accepted student day and all of those different things that come with school and applications. So at the beginning, I tried to make sure that was a priority, to make sure to have a mix of those two things, because whenever you meet anyone who is a key person in the school, they're going to want to see that mix. So that was a priority for me. In terms of figuring out how to really make almost the content work do the work for me, because there's so much I can produce as one person. I mean, obviously you want to keep increasing your content production, but you're still one person. So I think a big part of my strategy was figuring out who those key people were, who can write, and then what kind of things they can write. So for some people, that might just be like writing a few quotes. Some people are very good at conveying, just like maybe it might be like something that supports, again, another strategic role. And then there's other people who actually prefer to write the whole piece. Figuring out who's best at either of those things, I think, was the most important thing, because I hate to say it, but not everyone is a writer. you can learn. Yep. Everyone can learn, but at the end of the day, again, it's not everyone's full-time job. They don't have the time to write, especially if you're a professor or if if you're leading the mission of the school. It's really hard to get someone to write. So just figuring out like what everyone's bandwidth is, what their skills are, and navigating all of those things.
That's so funny because, I agree with you 100% that not everyone can write, especially write for a digital channel like a blog, right? But I bet you that faculty members think that they're exceptional writers because they write papers, but that is a different type of material. We don't want to copy paste that into a blog.
Yeah, no, 100%.
That's impossible to read, right? So what did you do then to overcome some of those challenges, and knowing that some of the folks that could contribute content weren't maybe trained to do so?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI has been a huge help for me with that. I still, like being a one-person content team, at least a full-time one, I think having essentially an intern is very helpful, but you don't always have the person to do that or the bandwidth within like the actual department. So I really use AI as my intern. I mean, at the beginning, it was a back and forth and getting terrible responses. I think we all know that. And I think when you use it over time, I think a lot of people don't realize this, but if you have an account for any of these type of AI channels and you're constantly using it, it's really training it, right? It's a robot. It's a piece of technology. So I kind of just spent a lot of time training it. So training it what my voice is and what other people's voices are. So there's certain types of voices you're going to get from every department. So, for example, the president of the school is going to talk very differently than the faculty professor. Like they're just going to have a little bit of a different voice. So training the AI model to learn all these different figures in school, like figuring out how to make them sound natural, but still keep that voice. So that was a big thing I did with AI in the beginning, was like pretty much training each persona. So like for my own writing, for faculty, for guest writers, for students, and then just working with it for outlines, like getting the crowd, figuring out topics, creating outlines for the faculty to work with, because like we said, not everyone's a writer. So having an outline, almost like an assignment, is very helpful.
Yeah.
And then also just helping some people like have a lot of good ideas, but they don't know how to make it very concise. So also doing things like that, taking really long quotes and making them sound as polished as possible. I think all these things you can theoretically do on your own, right? But all the time you can save and focus more on, the value of the content. You get that time back by using things like AI.
So I'm curious about the volume. How much content are you producing, and how much of it is something you just write or something that you curate from someone else in the community?
Yeah, so I would say that I'm currently doing, at this point now, maybe only 1 or 2 articles a week at most. Before I was doing it all myself. Honestly, I was pushing out a lot more than I probably should have. Honestly, being completely being honest with you. But I'd say that I would say 90% of it now is being handed off to faculty, to guest writers, to students.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's very valuable for most of the students and the faculty, because I think they see it more as an opportunity to build their digital presence. That's usually the way I pitch it to a lot of students, because I mean, digital brand matters. When you get out of school, that's the first thing any employer is going to look up is your name and where you stand on Google. So it's another whole SEO thing that I also try to explain SEO a little bit to the students too, and the value of that for them too. So yeah, I would say we're pushing out now between 13 to 15 articles a month.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's a lot. Wow. What's that workflow look like? So you ideate what topics, I'm assuming. You make the outlines. You send them off to folks, and then how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, at the top, it's always me and my coworker, my SEO specialist, Ash. So we usually start at the top to kind of figure out just like, our strategy for all the articles. What's our why? I mean, you should always have that. And then from there, we usually start to get those outlines together. I'll pass it back to her, and we do a lot of back and forth. So like it took us a while to get that structure of where it just, I mean, I don't know if you use Basecamp, but it could be a mess in there if you do not have a structure.
Yes.
So we had to figure that out too. It's just like, how can we keep passing this back and forth in like in a database like Basecamp that's a little outdated? Sorry, Basecamp. but
fix it, Basecamp. Fix yourself.
Yes. Shout out to Basecamp. But yeah, just like a lot of back and forth, a lot of constant communication, and also just making sure that the process that we're having is understood on the other side. The reason why we're doing these things makes sense. Like at the basis of SEO is understood from the faculty or the student or the alumni, whoever it may be. But yeah, it's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of constant communication. But we'll start out with our outlines. Depending on we usually gauge the communication between the persons. Sometimes we'll have our SEO brief at the beginning. Other times we'll have it at the end because some people like to get things out quick and other people take longer. So it's just, it'll keep changing its structure depending on the person. But yeah, the basis of it is pretty much back and forth communication.
What are the 10 AI tools you can't afford to miss in 2025? From automating tasks to personalizing content, find out at AI Engage Summit. This free virtual event on February 25th and 26th will give you the tools to thrive in higher ed's AI-powered future. Register now at enrollify.org/engage. How do you choose what topics you're going to publish?
It's a lot of research. It's funny enough, but we start most of our research not in things like SEMrush. We usually start in Reddit. We start on YouTube comments. Especially
social intelligence.
I mean, especially every school, I think at this point has a Reddit for their, and the people are the most honest on there that you have ever seen in my life. Sometimes for the wrong reasons, but they're very honest. So I usually go in there. I'll go on it depends on who we're speaking to. So if we're talking to a parent, I'm going to go on Facebook groups, especially St. John's Facebook groups is very fun to read. I spend at least like once a week just going in there. What's nice too is a lot of school Facebook groups tend to be monitored by someone in the school. So that's always nice to be able to share blogs in there for parents. And but yeah, a lot of my research kind of starts where the students or the parents are going.
And are you trying to answer questions they have, or are you serving content based on some communication plans? I'm just really curious, like how you decide what to write.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I'm still trying to figure that out sometimes. You think it's funny because you have such a good month and you're like, oh, I'm back at the beginning again.
Yeah.
But like I said, a lot of times I do like to create an outline for the year of just like the important things. So I try to connect I have a couple of just different leaders throughout the school. We have our liaisons as well. I try to have them also give me priorities for the school. And just have those 6 months ahead. It's nice to just have those because they're usually evergreen. They can be used, not all of them, but some of them can be used whenever. I mean, students are always going to be looking up, like, how do I decide which career is for me? It doesn't have to be a certain time of the year. But yeah, and then also, obviously, platforms like SEMrush. I'll use that as well. Google People Also Ask is another great SEO free tool that I use as well too. But it's tough. I couldn't say it's easy to choose topics because it's overwhelming. There's so much indirectly related to college life and career after college.
I can imagine how overwhelming it is if you don't try to stay ahead of what you're currently producing, right? Because it's never ending, it feels like, with 10 to 14 a month. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about results a little bit. And specifically, I want to know, in general, how have the blog posts changed awareness of the institution? And then what are some of the specific topics that have been performing really well?
Yeah, so I think it's twofold, kind of the changes. So obviously there's the SEO ranking side. So it'd be certain keywords we've noticed. And I think that what's the most exciting about ranking certain keywords, and something we've kind of put in place, is they're really important keywords for just our values. I think we mentioned that before, but we really have been trying to rank for things for like, what is success? Like, the importance of career mentoring, why faculty relationships are important, things like that, I think are so evergreen, so valuable. And if you can keep ranking for such almost non-branded keywords, because it's great to have a mix of both. That's something we also try to do. But if you can get the non-branded ones, that's even more exciting because it can reach anyone, right? It's like anyone at any point of the journey. Also, in terms of social media engagement, because I think a lot of people forget how important it is to also look at your blog not as just how am I going to rank on Google, but also how can I engage my existing community in a purposeful way. So I think that's been, to me, the most valuable of all. SEO is great, but I think getting alumni who maybe they just didn't really think about their college career anymore. Like they just don't. They want to put it behind them because the only thing they have to think about is that bill that they pay. Reconverting them into a fan, I think, is huge. There's so many alumni that I've interviewed that I think have been reconverted. They come back now as speakers. They want to be mentors. I think that's so valuable to me. It's like a whole new chapter of St. John's for them. I think a lot of the times we put it behind us, like we graduate, like, okay, we got our job. It's like, all right, forget about the school. I don't want to, I get those emails. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And yeah, I think it's nice to see so many alumni, getting, we do a lot of interviews, and I try to do a little bit more of, because we have our editorial pieces, and I try to do more organic things that matter to them. So I think it's a little bit more natural for them to share. So just finding that value on social media through like the students who want to share, the alumni want to share. I think that's a really important result for us, is like just getting all pretty much, you want to get your name out there as much as possible. So it's like what's the most organic way is really making people share their accomplishments, share what they're proud of. I think another thing too, like we said, keywords, some things I said, defining success, what is success, career mentoring, also, it's funny, we get a lot of, I work with a campus dietitian and those have also been ranking. I think a lot of parents tend to look this up, but we get a lot of thing about plant-based eating, how to navigate allergies on campus. Just, importance for everyone. Like, what's the most important thing? If your kid's, of course, going to school, you want to make sure they're safe. So it's good to look at the keywords from different angles. It's like, okay, what are the parents looking at? What are the students looking at? The alumni, like, what do they want to see? And that's something we've been doing. And I think it's nice to have different keywords for different audiences and just seeing that kind of unfold.
So overall, how have you seen your blog performing now versus when you first started?
Honestly, our blog was pretty sad when we first started. So of course, it's always going to look much higher in terms of results. When we first started, there was no one doing it full time. We had only student workers doing it. So of course the bandwidth was limited. So since then, I think it's been now 2 years. I mean, we've seen like pretty much 1,400% of an increase. I mean,
Wow.
of course, this is compared to when we had students who like didn't have as much of a bandwidth, but it's still exciting
That's
to see.
amazing.
Yeah. And it's exciting to see too, like we've constantly seen our visibility go up. We're pretty much at 3% visibility for the blog, which when you compare it to the website traffic is very, very small, but it's exciting to see, something like a blog, because people laugh at it. It's like, oh, why would I start a blog?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of that?
Yeah.
But when you like kind of shape your mentality of how a blog is to more of as a resource center for different departments, I think it changes. I think that's when people want to actually get articles written about them or, get resources for your department. So it's been exciting.
I mean, I definitely see it sort of as a service even. Like I'm imagining prospective student families, like the student themselves and the parents. What I love is that some of the stuff that you're writing is directly addressing questions that they have. Yes, for your university, but in general. And, if this is important now, it's going to become even more important, as we said earlier, when folks are starting to use AI as search engines. Because you have the SEO part down, but the content part too is what's going to help you appear in some of those AI results. So I think you're set up for at least the next 5 years here. Yeah. That's awesome.
and I think that like so many people are so scared about AI. And I think that if you shift your thinking, I think there's so much more room. Believe it or not, people get scared about the human connection and all that. I actually think there's more room for human connection if you spend more time actually giving a little tasks to AI. I think it gives you more time to actually talk to people like they're people. I mean, that's kind of the reason why I started is like, if I can hand off these things that take me an hour to do, and it's basic stuff, like making even spreadsheets, making like general spreadsheets, I have more time to talk to people and listen to their concerns, listen to like the resources they need, and kind of come up with a plan that's valuable for everyone.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. Is there anything else you want to share for folks who may want to try this themselves?
I would say, I know we were talking about even like what I would do differently. I mean, I think what's so important is just having a strategy. I mean, I know that's so obvious, but like, do you know when people go into this stuff with not having a strategy and the amount of campaigns even I've done in the school, just like how much things didn't have initial strategy. Sometimes like when you do things, you do the strategy at the end, which is the wrong move. I think that's something I probably would go into it and I would start out knowing my why. It's really hard to choose content when you don't know that. It's really hard to figure out what topics to do every month if you don't know your why. So that's something I would say is just know your why, have a good content strategy, and have your pillars, and it'll be a lot easier to think of content if you have those.
Yes. Start with what your audience needs. Find your why. This is great advice. Yeah. This is really great advice. Thank you so much, Toni, for sharing this SEO-driven blog with us. I think I'm really hoping to see more blogs at universities in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen, honestly, because the way that, Google is shifting with how they look at how they kind of rank articles, I think it's becoming more based on insights and less about length. And, it's really just going back to the quality. And I think more people are going to resonate with having things like blogs.
Yeah. And we'll link the blog in the show notes for folks. But if they want to reach out to you and ask more questions, where can they find you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they can find me on LinkedIn, Toni Critelli. Feel free to connect. But yeah, awesome. I'm always happy to chat. I could talk for hours, so feel free to pick my brain.
Take her up on this, folks. Her LinkedIn will also be in the show notes for you. And sadly, that is the end of our episode today, everybody. To our listeners out there, follow and subscribe to keep walking the walk and talking the tactics.
The Talking Tactics podcast is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month,
And we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions pros find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Jenny Lee Fowler, Jeremy Tiers, and so many of your other favorite leaders in higher ed too. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Check them out at element451.com.